That are in authority. And we take that time to do that. Lord, I pray for each of these that have decisions to be made and discussions would be brought forth, Lord, with wisdom from heaven, that you would direct our words, you would direct our thoughts, that you would be glorified in the decisions that are made, so that this county would advance, would go forward in a direction that will bring prosperity and blessing to its people, and that peace would reign, and that the rule of law and justice would go forth, Lord, and we would have families that would be able to grow in security and strength. So, Father, whatever the decisions need to be made, Lord, we ask again that you would direct it, that you would give the wisdom to each individual and to this assembly here. And Father, we thank you that a nation that's under God, and those that would take the time as this morning to even call upon your name. Lord, you said if we'd call upon you, you would hear us, you would answer us, and you would give us that which we petition of you. And so Lord, the decisions we place in your hands. And Lord, we thank you that we'll know beyond our even natural ability, because of the Spirit of God that you send and the wisdom that you bring. And we thank you for this. And we thank you for these that are called to your service, Lord. Lord, may they be protected. May they be at peace. May they be blessed in their families and in their homes. And so that they can come here and they can learn and grow together of the information that needs to be gathered. And Lord, that they would be able to make those decisions. Thank you for them. Thank you for them willing to serve. We bless them now. We bless this time. And we dedicate it unto you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I believe Mr. Mortensen will not be here today also. So if you'll proceed with the roll call.
Lois Burry. Here. Brian Hurchin.
Here.
Julie Spear. Here. Joel Hurchin.
Here.
Bill Peavy.
Here.
Gerald Peterson.
Here.
Charlie Grant.
Here.
Tom Dowd is absent. Chuck Mills.
Here.
Richard King.
Here.
Wallace Haphager.
Here.
John Mortensen. Absent. Esther Wentz.
Here.
Jean Ritz. Gordon Awesome.
Here.
Tom Kaflish.
Here.
Chuck Strumke.
Here.
Richard Marzoff.
Here.
Sharon Norton Bauman.
Here.
Ron Troyer is absent. Roger Rebholz.
Here.
Bill Cranmer.
Here.
Daryl Standifer. John Borup.
Here.
Clarence Malick.
Here.
Don Jordan. Ron Raymond.
Here.
Cindy Leonard.
Here.
Linda Lucky.
Here.
Stan Kruger.
Here.
Denise Gunderson.
Here.
26 present, 5 absent. Mr. Whiting, if you care to deliver your report.
morning. Thank you. Let me start. Some of you probably saw the New Richmond paper, if not the Finance Committee minutes, but the RFP for the property that the county owns up in New Richmond, the parcel that was cut off from the rest of the county farm by the highway project up there. We did not receive any proposals. There was, as some of you know, a gentleman who had been approaching the county for a couple of years about it, and he did not put in. I have not been given an explanation why. This Finance Committee will just hold that property now for consideration at some other time. We have 3 retirements in the next 3 weeks that are fairly significant. I'd like to just thank these 3 people. Gary Coleman, who's Director of Emergency Communications, Ralph Robley, Director of Building Services, and Bob Clanderman, Chief Deputy, are all retiring between now and May 4th. Those positions have been advertised, as has the HR Administrator position that the Board approved last month. But if you see those 3 gentlemen, thank them. They're I don't know exactly how many years they've put in with the county, but I suspect between the 3 of them we're approaching close to 100 years worth of experience that we're losing. So good luck to them. The PTO donation policy that was approved by the board has been agreed to by all the collective bargaining units except for one, and I expect to receive that within the next few days. We will make the employees aware of that policy so that they can make application for it. And Barsness Consulting, the consulting firm that we've been using on the development of the government center property here, has had a notice put in all the county newspapers soliciting input from your constituents on what can or should be done with this property. The email address that is up on the board is actually my email address. That's what's being advertised for individuals to send their input to the county. Certainly, if you hear from people, pass on their comments to myself or directly to Barsness. We'll hopefully have an adequate response to that. And finally, after the meeting is the board goal setting session, review of last year's goals. I put together a summary of those goals and what's been worked on since last year. You should have all received those. If you haven't, you may want to see me after the meeting, but we'll have it all projected on the wall for you, and we'll retreat over to room 1259. You'll be getting some lunch from the jail, and you can take as much time as you'd like going over those goals. That's my report.
Just a quick question in reference to the 3 positions that we've noticed. I think in the past it's been discussed in this body, and concern for many supervisors here, that we are not excluding the greater metro area, which seems to be a trend we do when we have a huge amount of asset potential sitting over there. These positions, were they advertised in the Twin Cities, or did we?
Yes, they were.
Okay, good.
Other questions for Mr. Whiting?
Thank you.
You were mailed some suggested changes to the minutes of the last meeting. And what is your wish with respect to the consent agenda, including the minutes? Ms. Wentz? You're moving to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes. Is there a second? Mr. Ritz seconds it. Mr. Mr. Ritz. Any discussion about the minutes or other matters on the consent agenda? All in favor should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. Consent agenda adopted. The next item are appointments. I'm not ready to offer those for confirmation by the board. Would ask you to consider them at the next month's meeting. In the meantime, incumbents simply continue on as they were on the Health and Human Services Board and the Board of Adjustment, as is our custom. Next, we're ready for the nursing home report, I guess. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Wentz, anybody else who wants to lead off on that? Mr. Kruger?
Thank you. Just as a quick note, the Nursing Home Review Committee will meet May 14th at 1 p.m. in the Government Center. That is the next scheduled meeting. Quick review. Since last month, we conducted a couple of meetings that were noticed on April 10th. The first of which was a tour and a lunch with Christian Community Homes. That included staff as well as the entire Nursing Home Review Committee. The second meeting conducted on that same day was what I would consider a regular meeting of the Nursing Home Review Committee. There were really two agenda items that day. First was, again, closed session to negotiate specifically with Christian Community Homes. It is anticipated that these closed sessions will continue until such time as an agreement is reached. When the negotiations are completed, then the information, as I understand it, would become public immediately. And Greg, I didn't get a chance to talk with you specifically about that last comment before the meeting, but I think that summarizes the gist of the conversation. Or, okay, well, then we'll just assume that it did.
It's a non-binding comment.
Yes, yeah, okay, that'll work.
And we're dealing with a moving target. Nobody can quite predict what the situation will be in a month or so.
Right.
Maybe you should repeat that.
I can. Basically, when the negotiations are complete, that's when the information would become public become available to the public for information.
Right.
Thank you. Next time I'll give you a heads up. As far as the open session item on the agenda that day was discussion of approval process, specifically related to the role of Health and Human Services. At the last meeting, I believe, of the county board, there was some discussion about county board having final approval of anything that is negotiated, if that is the case. And the answer to that question is yes, it's a full county board decision. In the nursing home subcommittee meeting, there was no formal motion and approval process with regard to the discussion about the role of Health and Human Services, but the gist of the discussion was as such. The Nursing Home Review Committee has been given the responsibility to negotiate, and any negotiated proposal could go directly to the full county board. Health and Human Services may conduct a meeting to review the proposal prior to county board, and that would be done in open session, not with the intent to negotiate. That's really all I have from the two meetings, but I just thought it was important to clarify Health and Human Services role. And I don't know if committee members that participated in the tour and the meeting have any other comments?
I'm not on that committee, but I got a question here. I understand that supervisors, any supervisor can attend these committees, and I will attend the one in May. But can somebody brief us as to what that committee is really striving for in its negotiations that wouldn't compromise the closed session stuff? Because I really have no concept of where they're trying to go with this, so it's not sprung upon us after there's already an agreement pending approval of the county.
Well, I think it would be fair to say that those who take an interest in the details should feel free to exercise their right as a supervisor to attend closed sessions. But we're not in a position to publicly speak at this point about the specifics. Probably shouldn't go beyond that at this stage. Anything else before we go on? Don't leave the lectern there, Mr. Johnson. I think we could, well, on the other hand, I see Mr. Coleman is here, so he could answer those questions that you had, Mr. Mills. If you would step off for just a second, Fred. Mr. Coleman, would you come up so you can present your visage to the masses? There you go. And here's this.
You present that. Okay.
Oh.
As Chuck said this morning, we are losing one of our valued employees. And it was made known to us at my committee meeting that Gary says, I don't want any fluff or fanfare or anything like that. Typical airborne type of a reaction. And so we respected that. I want you to know, Gary, that the Finance Committee was going to pop for a luncheon over at the Hudson House today. We scrubbed it. Instead of that, I'm dead. Instead of that, we're going to have a nutrition bar and a cookie from the jail. Also, we had a big chocolate microphone. Some of you saw that thing out in the hall there. And John Borup ate it. He thought it was a leftover from Easter. So we're not going to do that. Okay. But I think from all of us, Gary, we want to issue a great big thanks. You've done a heck of a job. There's been a lot of projects here in the last 7.5 years that you've overseen. Lord only knows that we've saved many, many thousands of dollars in consultants' fees. And this particular item, and we know you've been active in APCO, which is the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials. It's an international organization. Gary's been extremely active in that. And this is a letter from the President encased in Lexan, bulletproof, as you're aware of. Okay?
Thank you.
Very good. And then, Gary, we have our own county plaque to pass to you. We hope that it will remind you of your service and how much we treasure it, and that there'll be a place in your home office for it. Again, on behalf of the supervisors, thanks very much.
Thank you. I was just authoring my farewell letter to you folks that I intended to give you on Friday, my last day. I couldn't give you today because I don't think I could get through it, but thank you.
Very good. Let's take up the resolution regarding long-term care design then, or redesign. This is a resolution coming to us from the Health and Human Services Board, so it's appropriate that Chairperson Wentz offers a motion. Is that correct? Is there a second to this motion? Ms. Burry? Shall Fred explain it with Kirsty's backup there? Go for it.
We have the resolution that I think everybody's had a chance to hear about, or hopefully has had a chance to read. I've highlighted a couple of things that I might want to talk about specifically, and this is a resolution that comes from Health and Human Services, and then Charity, I think Council on Aging addressed it just this last week? Last Thursday. So it's actually a joint resolution from both committees. In addition, it's a resolution that has been supported by the Long-Term Support Advisory Committee. I can talk about a couple of specifics with regard to this resolution, or if there's any specific questions that Chair C and I may be able to answer.
Although I've heard several presentations on this, I'm not entirely clear, and perhaps my confusion is shared by others. Would you please clarify what is that distinction in the 4th whereas the family care pilot counties and the partnership demonstration projects for the benefit of all of us?
Primarily, family care has to do with managed care for long-term support services, you know, where the partnership model would cover the long-term support services that consumers need to remain in their home in addition to the acute and primary care. So that's the primary distinction.
Acute and primary is like hospital.
Hospital, pharmaceutical, et cetera, yes.
Could you please explain to the board and for the benefit of the public the verbiage on the second page regarding open procurement process, and could you review with the board the fact that we've sent a letter to the Secretary Hayden regarding our concern for the competitiveness of the process?
Yes, that whereas was specifically added after Health and Human Services met. There was opportunity prior to reviewing the resolution to talk with state officials about the procurement process that they would go through when they would release the RFP to talk to solicit either public or private entities to take over the care management responsibilities for our long-term support consumers. In that process, there was some concerns identified in the actual RFP that the state has already issued, I think, in Racine and Kenosha County, and that had to do specifically with points being awarded to care management organizations that have participated in planning with consortia, that they would be given an unfair advantage potentially with their planning activities when other care management organizations that could meet the needs as well may not have done as much specific planning would be at a competitive disadvantage. So as a result of that, the Health and Human Services Committee through Chair Wentz drafted a letter, submitted it to Secretary Hayden asking that that component of the RFP be removed, and that was, I believe, sent March 21st. I looked at that letter this morning, and to date we've not heard back. I have heard back in a subsequent meeting with Deputy Secretary Bika, and the initial indications are the state does not agree that the language in the RFP would be considered to give one care management entity a unfair competitive advantage. So I'm still waiting to hear back and anticipate that we should hear back soon, but I don't have any official response other than just anecdotal comments at a subsequent meeting. Does that sufficiently?
I think that the problem here is the way the RFP was written, it excludes competition, and that's why I think the Health and Human Services Committee wrote that letter. And the state has taken, I think, an arbitrary position regarding this, and it was one inconsistent with what the federal government Medicaid people told us in a conference call. So I think it's important for the supervisors and the public to be aware of this, because long-term costs in health care are not going to be held down by excluding competition. Thank you.
Mr. Cranmer?
I would like to offer a small amendment to this proposal. In the now therefore be resolved on the second page, down toward the bottom, second paragraph from the bottom, it says, now therefore be it resolved that St. Croix County Board of Supervisors that St. Croix County elects not to create a new licensed care management organization that would bear the financial risk for all long-term care covered services, and that St. Croix County plans to be ready with other area counties to request that the State Department of Health and Human Services issue a request for a proposal. Seems to me we have kind of a lot of requests in there, but what I think is unnecessarily circuitous in this is that the plans to be ready. And my amendment is to strike plans to be ready or sorry, plans to be, and substitute is, so that it would say that St. Croix County is ready with other area counties to request that the State Department of Health and Human Services and so on. Is that clear?
Is there a second?
For the purpose of discussion.
Second by Mr. Strumke. Could you address that, Fred?
This proposal, excuse me, this resolution has been in front of the Health and Human Services Committee, the Council on Aging, and I believe the Long-Term Support Committee, which Supervisor Cranmer, you're part of. I don't know that the specific language, well, there was several edits. That was one of them that was not edited through this, I think, extensive review process. The intent here is to authorize, tell the state we are ready for the RFP to be released. And if that amendment makes it more clear, that would be perfectly fine with me. But that's what the intent of the resolution is that one, we're not electing to create a new care management organization, and two, we are ready through our planning efforts to ask the state to release the proposal for our area. And then finally, the other item on this is that the Aging and Disability Resource Center will be a county-operated function. So I don't know if the wording makes it unclear, but that's the intent, is to tell the state we're ready.
Ms. Duncan, is that your understanding from the way the Council on Aging dealt with it? As far as you're concerned and the Council is concerned, St. Croix County is now ready with other area counties to make that request?
Yes, already Pierce County, Dunn County, and Chippewa County have passed similar resolutions, and I believe Eau Claire County is considering a similar type of resolution to bring to their county board.
I'd say Polk is also.
Polk is, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Cranmer?
In light of what Ms. Duncan and
Microphone, please.
in light of the what Ms. Duncan and Mr. Johnson have just said, I think we are no longer planning to be ready. We are ready, and so I urge that my amendment be adopted.
Any other discussion, supervisors, on the amendment before we vote on it? Ms. Spear?
I see that the Council on Aging did not sign on the back here, and neither did Greg Timmerman. Did he have a chance to review this resolution? Thank you.
Mr. Timmerman nodded affirmatively.
And at the time that was submitted to you to get in the mail, we hadn't met yet. We met last Thursday. So and it was passed unanimously with those who were present.
Does anyone know if the Long-Term Support Committee passed it or even considered it?
They considered it, but because they're an advisory committee, we put a line in there in the resolution, but did not have their specific approval.
We might be ready. Mr. Standiford.
I just, excuse me, I just seek clarification. I want to make sure I understand correctly, Fred, what you indicated. The language as presented to us has been vetted by several committees, and this is the language preferred by the committees and by you?
It's been reviewed by all of the committees that I had referenced, and I don't necessarily have a personal investment in a change at this point. My purpose is to make it clear that we are ready, and so I think that the modification would make sense, and I can only speak for myself, not the other committee members, but they are all present, or at least a number of them are present today.
Am I right that other counties have been joining our movement here since the time this was first drafted? So the expression that we are now ready, that it is ready, might not have been true 2 weeks ago or longer when this was first drafted?
That could be a fair assumption. I think it might be, from my standpoint, I just want to make sure it's conveyed that we would like to request the state to release the RFP, and whatever language makes that clearest for this board and for the public would be sufficient for me.
Okay. Supervisor, do you have enough? Mr. Stanifer.
Could I ask someone from the Health and Human Services, maybe Chair Wentz, just to weigh in? I'm feeling somewhat ambivalent on the change. I hate to just arbitrarily change things that come to us vetted by committees. However, I'm persuaded that the logic as presented here by the supervisor would seem to have some merit, and I just want to appropriately vote.
I think that what the Health and Human Services Board wants to do is to make it very clear to the people that this is what we want to have happen. And if is going to replace plans to be, makes it more clear, then I think we should go with that. And I have no objection to that as the chair, and I'm sure, I can't speak for my other committee members, but I'm sure they feel the same way.
So you yourself plan to vote for the amendment?
Yes.
Very good. Any other discussion before we vote on the amendment to substitute the word is instead of the words plans to be? Everybody clear what we are voting on? We should be able to do it with a voice vote. If you're now ready, a yes vote is in favor of the amendment, of course. All in favor should now vote yes. Yes. And opposed, no. It passes unanimously. Are you ready to adopt the whole resolution with the amendment incorporated into it? Mr. Strumke.
In general, and I give great deference to the committees that do review these issues, but looking at finances all the time, what is the financial impact of deciding not to go with the state's plan and do our own? Is there a positive, a negative, or a neutral issue, and about how much is it?
On the second page, there's a paragraph that talks a little bit with regard to the financial impact. And just so this, so the board is aware, we would intend to complete a full fiscal analysis and bring back a second resolution with a specified amount that would be able to answer some of those questions in detail. What I see happening here, and I think has been discussed at our committee level, at least at Health and Human Services, and I'm not sure about aging, but there's really three options for us to consider. One of those options would be to continue to do what we're doing now, which means about 150 adults on wait lists and trying to manage wait lists and serve as many consumers as we can. And we would see, certainly cost of living increases in future budgets that are, inherent in salary and fringe and providers increase costs. The second option that's being presented today is to join a consortium to ask the state to release the RFP, and we would like to be part of that process. But embedded in there is, again, negotiating the financial impact that we would want to minimize that to the county. And the third option, which I think you might be getting at, is to buy down our wait list. What would it cost us to do this on our own? And that would be estimated at only for those individuals on our wait list would be $1.3 to $1.4 million, and that would serve approximately those 155 individuals that I mentioned. But one of the concerns I have is that with the county's growth, again, over the last, I think there was an article in, I'm not sure what publication, but it identified that St. Croix County from July of 2000 grew 26.7%. The next highest growth in the region was 9.2% Chippewa County. My point there is we're going to have more consumers in the future, and what other counties have experienced when they have moved or bought down their wait list is more people apply that meet the functional and financial screening criteria and are eligible, and your wait list has a tendency to grow back. What happened in La Crosse County is they had a caseload of about 400. They are a family care county, and their service population right now is, I think, 1,600 to 1,700 individuals. So I think as part of our fiscal analysis, we would bring back options to this board to say, what would it cost us to buy into the consortium, the money that we have invested right now into the system, about $2.5 million to serve our long-term support consumers. The state saying that goes with, and we're trying to minimize that allocation. We've got some concerns about economic support because that is the entity that does the financial eligibility. And so we want to make sure we have adequate staff to cover that and make sure that we're processing applications as efficiently as possible. The third is Aging and Disability Resource Center funding would need to be included in that fiscal analysis. So we would be looking at bringing that type of information back at a future date when the state gives us a template to work on as a consortium. We'll have our financial managers in each of our departments, that meaning from Chippewa County, Dunn County, presumably Eau Claire, St. Croix, and who's the other one? Pierce. And we would make sure that we're all looking at the flow of money the same way and considering variables so that we can bring back an educated projection to this board.
Just to follow up to that quick is what, if we do our consortium issue, what would be the impact on state aid?
At this point, the state is asking for $2.5 million, which is what we have in the system currently to serve our consumers. That would equate to all of our basic county allocation, which is about $1.5 million, plus an allocation of local county levy of $1 million. So we would lose the basic county allocation in terms of state dollars, and then the ability to leverage federal dollars would also be a consideration that we'd have to take a look at in our fiscal analysis. So there would be two pots of money that would presumably go, the administrative money that we get for administering the waiver programs, and then also possibly some of our basic county allocation.
So if I understand it right, if we vote this resolution, we have a significant potential to be losing over $1 million here in state and federal money.
We would, but we would also lower expenses that we wouldn't have in terms of serving consumers directly. But that would all be included in the fiscal analysis, and why I think it's an important point to identify that this resolution says, yes, we're ready, but we're going to bring back another resolution to this board so that you know exactly what you would be authorizing, and if at that point we decided it was too much money or it wasn't the right piece for our consumers, then you would have the option at that point to say no to the resolution.
Well, my question then is this resolution just says we're ready. Why do we have this resolution? If it's not an issue to say go forward and join the consortium and ask the state for this stuff, that means we don't like the state aid money. We want to do this all ourselves. We don't want the federal revenue coming. And I'm just curious why we have this resolution. To me, it would make more sense we had the resolution here saying here's the financial issues. Here's the impacts, and then a resolution to say go forward and join the consortium and do that. It seems to me we're saying, well, we want to join the consortium. This says we're ready to join the consortium. I don't understand the need for it.
A couple of issues that I guess I would respond to. One, we are already part of a consortium of counties that have planned, and we received a $250,000 planning and implementation grant. So we have been doing a significant amount of work with consortium of counties along with private providers. The second issue, I guess, is that it's a big enough policy decision that I thought it was important, and other counties thought it was important, to say if we're even going to continue with some of the planning, bring it forth to the county board and get a resolution so that the state knows that the full county board is aware of our planning efforts and that the county has said, yes, we're part of it. The third issue is that the state intends to issue an RFP likely in June to those counties that have indicated via a resolution or some other process in their county that they're ready. And I think it's better for us to be at the table with the state with a resolution in hand, or a letter from myself after a resolution is passed saying we're at the table now, negotiate with us, because there's a lot of money locally at stake here, and the goal is to obviously get rid of wait lists, but to minimize the drain on local tax levy money. For instance, primarily those counties that were brought into family care were asked to contribute 22% of their basic county allocation. For St. Croix County, that would be $300,000 to $400,000 approximately. There's quite a variation between what's being asked for right now of $2.5 million and $300,000 to $400,000. I think it puts us in a better position to have this resolution completed and sit at the table with the state and try to negotiate what our contribution would be, potentially even with a buy down to that level over a period of time. But I think it just puts us in a better position to have this resolution and say we're ready to be part of the RFP. We need to negotiate these points specifically.
Okay, and with that, just go back on the first, therefore be it resolved, is we're doing a little bit more than saying we're ready to be involved in the consortium. We are actually being asked to vote to the, especially the not that's underlined there. We're being asked to vote to, the county elects to not create a new licensed care management organization. How does that tie into the, I mean, that's a commitment. That's saying we're not going to do this. Telling, I guess, we're going to go to the consortium and to the state and say, we're not going to do this. What's the impact financially of that decision part of this resolution?
Again, I think it goes back to the paragraph that I referenced earlier, that they're one and the same in terms of the fiscal analysis. If we are not going to be the care management organization, we need to know specifically what is the county contribution, how much of our basic county allocation are they going to take to support a capitated rate that the care management entity would receive to serve all of our consumers. Because embedded in this is that a care management organization would take on the fiscal responsibility to serve all consumers that meet the functional and financial eligibility criteria. So I think that by not creating a private care management organization, we need to specifically address the financial impact, and that will answer the question that I think you have on what's the count, what funds will we lose, what will our expenses be reduced, how will we reallocate staff, new revenue streams that will come in, how will that impact the county. That would all be part of the final resolution that would be brought forth.
The chair senses that we are losing the interest of some of the members who appear to be ready to vote. So unless there is a contrary motion, the chair is going to call for a vote now to pass or defeat this resolution which has been offered to us. All in favor of the resolution should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. And it passes. We will, and I guess, Fred, you're the best one to speak to the county barn lease along with Supervisor Wentz as appropriate, or the Finance Committee. What do you have to tell us about county farm barn lease, the latest developments thereupon?
Give me a second to make a transition here from care management to the barn.
I can babble and provide Phil. A resolution started in the Health and Human Services Board and passed through the Finance Committee at the most recent meetings of both of those groups to proceed to execute a new lease for the vacant barn on the county farm property. And that would have been proposed to you this morning, to you, the county board, to go ahead and lease that. There was some opposition, so it was thought appropriate that the full board should address the question. But then I was informed by Mr. Johnson this morning that there's a new development, and I believe he is now prepared to tell you what it is.
Basically, since that time, maintenance has had an opportunity to take a look at the manure pit. What was, I believe, discussed with Health and Human Services is that when the pit was drained last year, one of the berms needed to be reinforced. And after the Health and Human Services Committee met, there was a question about how much water might have collected. Maintenance went back out and looked, and unfortunately the entire berm is starting to erode. It actually has collapsed in a couple of spots. So maintenance called upon Bob Heisey and his staff to take a look at it, because we're not talking about, at this point, a minor add a little bit of dirt to reinforce. We're talking about fixing the whole berm, quite frankly. And Bob, I know you're here, and if you have specific comments or questions, feel free to add, but you had one of your staff and somebody from a regional office come out, an engineer, and take a look at the manure pit, and at this point it looks like it would need to be totally replaced. And that price tag, while we don't have a specific amount or any bids, would be considerable, $40,000, $50,000. Is that maybe more?
Ms. Wentz, do you want to offer a suggestion with respect to this?
I would hope, but one of the reasons that we wanted to lease the barn was it was a moneymaker. And now if we have to do work on the pit, it's not going to be a moneymaker for us, it's going to be a money drain. However, I would hope perhaps maybe we could table this for a while and see if there are other options out there for us. Maybe young stock could be put in the barn or whatever. And also, if that's not possible, then to go on to the next level of finding out how much it would cost to have the barn taken down.
Okay, we don't have a motion as such, so we don't have to formally table it, but unless the body disagrees, we'll leave it in the hands of the capable committees to come forward with something after they study the latest developments, shall we say. Okay? Thank you very much. Yes, Bob? But you're going to have to speak very loud since you're not next to a microphone.
When my staff was out there, as well as the Department of Ag engineer, one of the things that you might consider is during the point of making a decision is putting a fence around that facility is just for our safety purposes. That was encouraged, and because the walls are falling in, and it could be proposed as a safety hazard.
So there's some things to think about. Thank you very much, Fred. The next three things involve, yes, Ms. Gunderson.
I just have a question for Fred. What time is that meeting on the 14th for the nursing home, and where is it at?
It's here. The meeting on the nursing home is May 14th at 1 p.m. and will be in room 1281, I believe, is what's reserved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next three items all involve land conservation issues. We've got a member of the public here with respect to number 6, Mr. Raymond, so I would propose that we take 6 and then go back to 4 and 5, if that works for you. Number 6 is the resolution to sell county property commonly known as the Oak Ridge property. And members, I want to tell you that late last week there was a call to me from Mr. Borgstrom, who is here today, who had noticed in the New Richmond News the county's plan to transfer the Oak Ridge property to the Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's the resolution that you were provided. And he wanted to know if he could bid on the property, and feels that he would pay more than the Fish and Wildlife Service, and he has brought in an offer to purchase for $13,000 along with a cashier's check from the Wisconsin Credit Union for 1/10 of that amount, or $1,300. Now, so the price would be $13,000. With that as background, we have a resolution, and it could be brought to the floor, and then in the formal process of things, we could proceed to deal with the resolution. And I think we probably should. Mr. Grant.
How much of that is swamp? 35% of her tank?
Almost all, but let's see, are we going to have a motion? Mr. Raymond, did you want to, as chair of that committee, make the original motion?
I want to bring the motion to the floor.
Okay, is there a second for that? Mr. Peavy seconds that. All right, now your question, Mr. Grant, was how much of that is underwater?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Mr. Heisey, why don't you come up and take the microphone at the lectern on the end there? And Mr. Raymond, you're first.
Yeah, I want to, this property is part of, as you recall, and I think I was reminded today, some 5 years ago, we started to look at inventorying the county property. I don't recall it being that long ago. But a couple of years ago, we actually got an inventory of county property, and a group of us went through and we identified about 20, 25 properties that were referred to land conservation to take a look at and see were they something we wanted to retain, dispose of, whatever. And there was quite a group of properties in there. This is one of those properties, happens to be in Stanton, and Bob will correct me if I say something wrong, so I'm going to proceed here with him looking over my shoulder. But there's about, the 40's got about 2 acres of it, or there's about 2 acres of solid ground. It's surrounded by public lands, either DNR, Fish and Wildlife, and it's part of a waterfowl area, production area up there. And for the years the county's owned it, it's been used for this public purpose. When we reviewed the property, we were looking at it kind of from the standpoint of, was there an opportunity to retain it in its present form, being for public use as a waterfowl production area, but get it off the county books. And so we talked with DNR and with Fish and Wildlife, see if they'd be interested in the property after some period of time, with the proviso that it needs to stay in the present purpose. The property where it's located actually is a pivot part of this waterfowl production area, so you'd want to keep it that way. Fish and Wildlife came forward with an offer. I might say we were willing to probably take less money to keep it in this public use, but they came forward, did an appraisal, made an offer, and we reviewed that with the Finance Committee, and we really would urge the board to approve this resolution. Should the board want to decide to offer it for public sale, we need to take a look at the kinds of conditions that we would want to put on the property so that it would stay in the waterfowl production area and not disrupt this whole wildlife area. So there's more here. There's somewhat of a domino effect if you take and do not use this property for its current public purpose. And in fact, I think that I'd recommend that the county retain ownership of the property if we don't move it on to Fish and Wildlife.
I would agree with the supervisor that it certainly seems to make sense to have it continue to be used appropriately, consistent with the contiguous property. But I have a process question, and maybe I'm asking Corp Counsel. Greg? Just so we all clearly see the issue, the property is in fact completely surrounded, and it is landlocked. If there would be hypothetically a transfer of this property into private ownership, what is the access to the property? It would require an access easement of some kind across the Fish and Wildlife land, which may or may not be possible. So I'm even wondering from a process standpoint if we could consider selling it to a member of the public when there is no access that's assured.
I think you're right. I'm not sure how the county acquired this property, if it was a tax deed or if it was deeded through some kind of transaction. But there is no access to the property, and any property owner that sells land to somebody else must provide access to that property. If it was an adjoining landowner that could access the property from adjoining land, that's certainly possible, but short of that, there doesn't seem to be, well, we could negotiate with landowners to provide access, but we can't guarantee that we could obtain that permission.
I don't see on the agenda any reference to Mr. Borgstrom or his proposal to buy this land for $13,000. I would refer my question, I guess, to a parliamentarian, but it seems inappropriate that we're even discussing that.
Well, in my judgment, if you, the board, wish to consider any advertisement for private sale, you would need to deny the resolution that is on the agenda. And if you wish to proceed with this resolution, we have an amendment that Mr. Timmerman's office has created that will address the specific details of how a transfer would be made. Do you wish to speak?
Under that agenda item, Buzz, it would be appropriate to consider other alternatives.
Even when it's not stated in the agenda?
Yeah, because it is directly related to that agenda item.
I'm the only one who has this amendment that's been created by Mr. Timmerman, so I'm going to ask Ms. Burry if you're willing to offer it. There are additional burdens that go with being District 1 supervisor, as you can see.
I will offer it.
All right, would you also read it, and then we'll see if there's a second for it?
It says, further be it resolved that the county clerk and county board chair are authorized to execute the purchase agreement and warranty deed.
Is there a second to that? Mr. Raymond seconded. All right, thank you very much.
That was a provision that was required in the documents from Fish and Wildlife.
Further discussion, Mr. Marzal.
Just a clarification, Mr. Supervisor, with respect to whom did that document pertain that you just read? Mr. Borgstrom or the Fish and Wildlife?
The Fish and Wildlife. That is a proposed amendment that adds the language that was just read. Further be it resolved that the county clerk and county board chair are authorized to execute the purchase agreement and warranty deed. Ms. Norton-Baumann.
I had that same question, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to clarify to whom we were transferring this property.
The only motion that is before us is the resolution that was sent to you with now an amendment that would transfer to the Fish and Wildlife Service. Mr. Strumke.
I guess it's a legal question for council, but DNR owns public land. Thus, any sale to the DNR is technically, I believe, a sale to the public. If we are offering property for sale to the public, should it not have been publicly noticed and allowed other people to actually participate in the bidding of this land?
Mr. Heisey?
I think Greg was going to comment on that.
Well, I think the DNR was offered it. Mr. King just told me, and the DNR offered $1.
This is being offered to the United States. The Department of Interior Fish and Wildlife Service Division, so it would be sold to the United States. And a county has the authority to transfer or convey any real estate to any other governmental entity without going through any bidding processes or without requiring payment for that land. The only requirement is that the conveyance is for a public purpose, and as the discussion has indicated here earlier, this would be for a public purpose.
I would agree, and that is normally done with the cursitory $1 issue, but we're now talking $12,000. I believe we've gone, I'm happy for it, but we've gone beyond that simple little government transfer issue once we start talking, thousands of dollars.
No, my point is we can convey the property on any terms to any other governmental entity, be it free, be it for $1, be it for $1 million. There is no requirement to advertise it for sale to the general public if it's going to be conveyed or transferred to another governmental entity. And for a public purpose.
Mr. Ritz.
I'm quite familiar with this property, and the county has had that land at least 60 years. I know that for a fact. It's always been, well, for the past 60 years, a wildlife area. It was privately owned, but it was closed during the waterfowl season. Other seasons were open, deer hunting, grouse, pheasants. And that's still the case. So it's a public use. there's a possibility that this property is purchased by a private owner, possibly getting access some way to decide that he's not going to obey the law as far as the no hunting goes for waterfowl. If he starts that, that's the end of the whole project. Now, that's a possibility because this was a case, another case in the county at one time. So I'm very much in favor of this being sold to the Fish and Wildlife Service.
What we ought to do is vote first on the amendment and then address the merits of the basic question, should the sale be made to the Fish and Wildlife Service. Are you ready to vote on the amendment which would authorize the clerk and chair to execute the documents? Mr. Rebel.
Could we have a read of that amendment?
It adds, further be it resolved that the county clerk and county board chair are authorized to execute the purchase agreement and warranty deed. Okay, all in favor should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Now, are you ready to deal with the main motion? Mr. Cranmer.
I was wondering, I haven't seen a map of this territory, but could somebody describe the surrounding property that to the property that the county currently owns?
Mr. Heising?
Yeah, yeah, it's actually surrounded all by, well, it's either a water body, a lake, but the majority of it is uplands that is managed for various wildlife purposes. And again, it's jointly owned. If you look on the plat book, and I think you have it in front of you there, it's owned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then there's also some DNR properties also incorporated into that large block of properties there. So there's two different public entities that own property up there, besides us.
So on all four sides, it is surrounded by public ownership.
Correct.
Are you ready now to vote on the main motion? Mr. Strumke.
Just a comment here is one of the problems on selling it to a private individual was we must provide access to it, but DNR land and federal Department of Interior land is all access to the public unless it's restricted up there that I don't know of. So there would be public access to that land by the landowner through the state and federally owned land.
Certainly there would be the ability to walk to get to it in that sense, but not in the legal sense of in which Greg and Mr. Standifer were using the term, I think. Are you ready now to vote on the main motion, which is to pass the resolution as amended? If so, you should now vote aye. 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 And opposed, nay. And it passes unanimously. We will return Mr. Borgstrom's offer and earnest money check to him. Let's take up number 4, the addition of the City of New Richmond Outdoor Recreation Plan. Mr. Raymond.
I'll bring it to the floor.
Second by Ms. Burry.
Okay, right. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. It's the sheet that's under kind of the bluish or aqua cover here. As you may recall, we passed the county outdoor rec plan here some time ago, a couple, 3 months ago. And the city of New Richmond has come forward and wants their plan incorporated, their outdoor rec plan incorporated as part of the county plan. And they've got some very good reasons. One is they're applying for some grant money, and there's a higher probability, higher score if you're part of the overall regional plan. But there's even I think a better reason for this is that this is the first of what hopefully are many town, village, and city plans that'll be put together under the umbrella of the county plan. County plan is, we don't want the county to do it all, but we'd like the county to kind of pull it all together, and this is the start of that. So we recommend approving the resolution to incorporate the New Richmond outdoor rec plan.
I'd agree to this 100% if we don't have to donate some money to the city of Richmond. They've asked our township that I live in for donations to their recreational plan. So I hope by passing this that we aren't encouraging them to solicit money from the county.
I had hoped to see something in the other direction. If they get the grant, I'd like to see a little piece of it coming to the county. So we'll discuss that when they're successful in getting the grant money, so we can get a little bit of that.
Supervisors, are you ready to vote on this resolution to incorporate the City of New Richmond's outdoor recreation plan? If so, please vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Next is a resolution authorizing an application for grant funds to renovate and develop the St. Croix County Park System facilities.
I'll move it to the floor.
Ms. Burry?
Okay, it's the yellow-looking sheet. This is an application for a grant for park improvement, not maintenance, but park improvement for $100,000 with a 50% share. So if we choose to, at the time, if the grant is, if we're chosen for the grant and we at that time then would have to make the decision whether to fund the $50,000 to get the share, since our share would be 50%. We've in the past been successful in getting these grants. I believe we've gotten better than $500,000 worth of grant money for park improvements. And we think it's important that we continue to improve our parks, especially with the population growth and the use in the county. This is not a grant for maintenance. That'll be a separate subject of the budgeting. But with the passing of this, we'll submit the grant, and we will then come forward with $50,000 as a part of our budget process. If it survives, the $50,000 survives the budget process, then should we be chosen, we'll be able to accept the grant. If not, the grant will go to somebody else.
So to summarize, in anticipation of questions, this is not a commitment to spend $50,000. Thank you. Are you ready to vote? All in favor of the resolution should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. And it passes unanimously. Mr. Heise, you have an annual report, I believe. Do you wish to give it now? You gave us something in writing. Was that the way you wanted to leave it? If you're ready to do it, we can take it now. And then when you finish, you can go outside and enjoy the day. I shouldn't have said that, should I? No. Because the contrast to us who are sentenced to serve right here is obvious.
Well, it hasn't in the past, so why should it now?
Ah. Well, we could take Mr. Fedrosi and the Planning and Zoning Committee's item number 7 if you need. Oh, well, that was pretty prompt. Go ahead.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bob Heise. I'm the director for the Land and Water Conservation Department and Parks Department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Supervisors, to get an opportunity this morning to give you a report on behalf of our Land and Water Conservation Department and Parks. In your packet, I'll refer you to the packet first. You should see a flyer in there looking at actually celebrating the Earth Day event here coming up this Saturday at the Hudson Middle School, and that was a cooperative effort between our department and Jennifer Havens from Recycling and many other organizations. It's 1 to 4, so bring your kids, grandkids, and hope to see you there. So why don't we just jump right into this presentation here. Like Ron said, we've been very successful over the past several years of receiving some grants, and this was one of those that we received here last year, and it was to install what we call a 10-person fishing pier at Glen Hills Park, and it's located just about 200 feet east of our boat ramp at Glen Hills Park. And this is a very similar fishing pier and has been used heavily at Homestead Park, and we thought, okay, what we should try to do is get something like this very similar at Glen Hills. This is in response to a need identified in our outdoor rec plan. Not only this plan, but past plans, is to provide more fishing opportunities for folks within a county. And this is a response to that. Last year at the same presentation, if you recall, in preparation of that fishing pier, since we knew we were going to get it, we constructed 14 fish cribs and installed those just in a circular right outside from the fishing pier. That showed great results as far as increasing fish habitat in and around that area, both on the fishing pier, both during ice fishing, and also folks coming in from the lakeside fishing those same fish cribs. Now, this is just a progression of that, where we installed another additional 14 fish cribs this year between the fishing pier and our boat landing. Again, same project. Part of this was to provide a handicapped accessible walkway from our parking lot down to their fishing pier. The retaining wall then was installed late last fall, and the finishing touches as far as the planting and the seeding up the bank will be done this coming spring. So that project's just about wrapping up. 2006 was a good year for our parks. If we start looking at the revenues received, you see each one of our three parks, our staff parks there. You can see a progression on the amount of revenues received in 2006, and you compare those from the previous years, 2004, 2005, and again, each one of the parks have shown a steadily increase in revenue, and we see that as a positive influence on our park system. This is a slide that really tracks, it's about a 30-plus years of historical data, and it really tracks our camper unit days in our Glen Hills campgrounds. And again, what I'm trying to show here is that we had and I wonder if the lights is gonna reach that far. Well, it kind of. There's a general trend here for several years that we're hitting right around that 3,000 camper unit days. And then right around in about 1994, we started seeing a decline, and right down to our low point in 2002. Now, there may have been several reasons for the decline. However, what I'm starting to see is there has been a lot of improvements made at the campgrounds, at the day use area, and Glen Hills Park in itself. And what we're trying to see is our usage is starting to increase. Park business is really no different than any other business. Once you start losing your clients, it's hard to bring those folks back again. And I think staff is doing a good job as far as working with folks and advertising and trying to show a positive increase towards that. And so I see that as a positive trend. Our timber harvest. I know that I've shared this with you in the past and let you know a little bit about that project. We are complete. And let me just share with you how this project all came about, and we'll share the breakdown. When we had our DNR forester estimate the amount of volume of cords in each one of our forests that were to be harvested, and we put that out for bid, our bid that we accepted was $84,645. When we finished our entire cutting of those four forests, our total revenue received was $115,230. So the question is, it's 26% more than what our original bid. So where did that 26% come from? Did we over-harvest our woods? No, actually what it was is a result of underestimating the volume. So as they looked at the sticks or number of sticks in each one of the trees, rather than estimating perhaps 3, many times we got 4 or 5. So that's where the extra volume came from our forests. So again, very positive project. The success of this project and much of the credit really needs to go to our supervisor, Gene Ritz. Yeah, you know, his background in forestry provided good direction to the committee, good direction to our staff, and I think the bottom line shows it right here. So thank Gene sometime. Moving into a couple projects in land conservation. This is a stream restoration on the South Fork of the Kinnickinnick River. It's a project that was done within our Kinnickinnick priority watershed. Very similar to what we did along the fairgrounds property there, along the Tiffany Creek, where we took the eroded banks, we shaped those back, we created some fish habitat, and this past year we did 2,100 feet of stream restoration in this stretch. We'll be doing another 1,500 feet this year. We upgraded the parking lot along with DNR, and again, this whole stretch will be open for public hunting, well, public fishing. This project, we're actually looking almost by the lake, actually looking out towards Highway H. We call this our South Cedar Bay Landing. And this was a cooperative effort between our Parks Department, who has actually sponsored that grant, with the Star Prairie Land Preservation Trust, the Star Prairie Fish and Game, the town of Star Prairie, Sportsman's Alliance, and our land conservation who oversaw this project. Essentially what this is a highway. You can see Highway H in the foreground, but it provides some parking and access onto the lake during the winter. The path coming down here, what we'll install this coming year is actually a boardwalk that extends over the marsh and then would be right onto the lake there. So it provides access if you're going to use a canoe, a viewing area for folks if they wanted to use it as that. But most importantly, it gets people off the highway and into a parking lot. And that was part of the safety of this project. In your green packet, there was in your packet, there was a green piece of paper that talks a little bit about the Working Lands Initiative. And this is and I just wanted to bring this to your attention because it's something that is starting to gain momentum here in the state. Our Secretary of Ag is championing this effort, and it's a way to start looking at how we're going to protect and preserve agricultural lands in the future. Currently, this initiative is not in the governor's budget. Unless there's separate legislation that's going to come beyond the budget, that would have to be dealt with separately. But I would probably look perhaps in another 2 years, perhaps this might be in. But again, some of the things that we're looking at, and you'll see the executive summary in there, is that part of the goals would be to retain the farmland preservation program, although with some changes. It would be develop a working lands enterprise area. These enterprise areas would be very similar to our agricultural exclusive ag zoning that we have currently now, very similar to something like that. Develop a statewide purchase of development rights or transfer of development rights program in the state, and then you can see some of the other components to the action plan here. This is something I just wanted to keep your attention to. There had been a number of workshops, listening sessions throughout the state over the past several years getting input into this plan. And again, I think it's something that's gaining momentum, and you'll probably see it in the next budget. And lastly, I also put in front of you a document that was developed by UW Extension. This is actually one of Jim Janke's documents that he was able to publish just before he walked out the door here just about a year ago. But it's really a compilation of well over 2,000 well results that were taken from our 2 previous drinking water programs in the county. And again, what it does provide is a general overall assessment of what our groundwater quality is in a county. Just to let you know that we are in the process of working with UW Extension again, and we will be beginning our 3rd round of drinking water samplings here this fall. So look forward to that. And then lastly, you know, these projects and this work cannot be done without the support of County Board Supervisors. our Finance Committee, policy direction from our Land and Water Conservation Committee, and your committed land and water conservation and park staff. So we thank you all for your support.
Observation and a question.
Yeah.
First of all, I wasn't aware we had a Paul Bunyan among us, Gene. Congratulations on your work on this project. It's great. It's kind of a behind-the-scenes type of thing. Would there be a replanting along with, like, every tree that's cut or something, or is it a?
No, not necessary. It's just thinning.
It's thinning, okay.
And there'll be subsequent thinnings now probably every 8 to 10 years. So, and nature will take care of itself as far as reseeding goes. In fact, there'll be too many in there, so they'll be wiped out with some of the lucky projects. There'll be more.
For the record, the answer was no, it's unnecessary to replant. This was a thinning, and there are sufficient trees. In fact, there will be further thinnings in the future. Thank you.
The beginning farmer and logger program, would a high school student be eligible to participate in that, or how does that? We can talk about this later,
Some
but.
of the details on that is I don't, I don't know if all the details are spelled out in that yet. Again, this is more of an initiative, and they're getting some input into it yet, Chuck. But I don't know if all the details are completely secure yet on that.
We can talk that over down in your
Sure.
shed sometime when you get the information in.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Heisey.
Thank you.
We could have the lights on the recommendation of the Land and Water Conservation Committee and Department. We are proclaiming the week of April 29th through May 6th as Stewardship Week. And the proclamation is, whereas fertile soil and clean water provide us with our daily sustenance, and whereas effective conservation practices have helped provide us a rich standard of living, and whereas our security depends upon healthy soil and clean water, and whereas soil and water stewardship calls for each person to help conserve these precious resources, therefore we do hereby proclaim April 29th through May 6th Stewardship Week. Let us take up item of business number 7, the amendment to the ordinance pertaining to section number. This comes to us from Planning and Zoning, Mr. Hobhager, and you are the author of the motion. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Kruger seconds the motion. Do you want Mr. Fedrosi to say anything about it, or are you covering it, Mr. Hobhager?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, there's no real change in the content of that ordinance. It's just that the section number was numbered incorrectly last month, and this here corrects the title and section number from 13.2 to 13.4.
It seems clear to the chair. Does anybody have questions that they wish to? Mr. Stanifer.
Excuse me, I'm curious. Ron is not here, but I would be interested from the committee discussion why he voted in opposition.
I read
Excuse
that,
me, I retract that. He was absent. Never
Are you
mind.
withdrawing your question? All right, members, are you ready to vote on this technical amendment? All in favor should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. We are scheduled today to have a report from the Planning and Zoning Department. Are you prepared to give that, Mr. Fedrosi, at this time? Let's take a 5-minute break, and you can use that for setup. And then we'll expect flawless technology.
Mr. Chairman, do you want those folks that haven't had a ID card cut to go over?
If you're ready, supervisors, we'll resume where we left off. For those who may not know him, and especially the television audience, this is the Director of Planning and Zoning's Department, David Fredrosi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. If you don't mind, I thought Bob's presentation worked well from here, and so I'll do the same if that's okay with you. There is a handout of our annual report at your desk this morning, and a couple of comments. There's a lot of information in there that I'm not going to put up on the screen this morning. A lot of individual charts with trends about specific program activities. They're in your report, so you can take a look at them later. I would just encourage you to follow along on the screen this morning and not get lost in the paper. So I'll mention that as I begin. I'll see if this device works. Yes, it does. I'm going to walk through reporting on our three basic program areas: planning, code administration, land information, and I'll pretty much go through in that order. Our planning program areas cover planning countywide and locally, as well as recycling and a number of special waste programs. Some planning highlights from this last year, principally 2006. A lot of activities focus on implementing our county plan. Special note, I want to talk about a rural living guide that was a cooperative adventure. We worked with the sponsoring agencies and some of the stakeholders on finalizing specifically the growth management portion of the St. Croix Crossing mitigation plans as a part of the major bridge project, and we'll be working with them in the future, expecting those activities to start up after June when the 6-month review period is up on the record of decision. Continued working on the sewer service area plan reviews for the Hudson area as a part of that process of developments with sewer hookups in the Hudson area. Cooperated with the coordinator and the finance committee on finalizing some property inventory activities and the various site plans that are going on, and also got involved in some intergovernmental coordination activities where local communities are trying to get together to do planning across an entire area. Again, we adopted a county development management plan back in 2000, and we're getting organized to start the process to update that plan starting probably later this year to get that in place by the end of the decade. And some important implementation activities that are taken right out of the implementation program in the county plan, working with towns on comprehensive planning, continuing to do ordinance development with our various ordinances. We process a plan review as a part of rezonings. Also want to specifically mention regional groundwater model that's been a cooperative federal, state, local project. And we've also been preparing and participating in technical reviews of some of the larger state and federal transportation projects, making a connection between the comprehensive planning work that we've been doing and the more transportation-oriented features of those projects. I specifically want to mention our Heartland Planning Project. For probably 3+ years, we worked with 5 towns in the center of the county on developing a multi-jurisdictional plan and individual comprehensive plans for these 5 towns. And we're pleased to say that in the spring and early summer of last year, all of the town plan commissions and town boards in those 5 towns approved the plan and their individual plans. All of the grant reporting that we provided and grantsmanship to help fund the project was all completed, all the reports turned in. So we've, in effect, closed out that project this last year. And there were some important things that came out of that, particularly some important land use and development policies, looking at such concepts as development density. And when the plans got done, we actually have worked already with a couple of those towns on a contract basis to help them develop some adjustments to their town ordinances that will help implement some of these changes. For instance, the town of Baldwin has already completed and adopted changes to their subdivision and driveway ordinance to implement issues and changes in policy they wanted to, that they identified as a part of their plan. With the closeout of that project, or even before, back in late 2005, we started to work with the town of Star Prairie on the development of a comprehensive plan for that town, and that work is ongoing. This last year, we saw the results from a community-wide survey, conducted an open house with the Town Plan Commission and Town Board, worked and largely completed plan elements for utilities and community facilities, transportation, housing, and worked with the town and extension resources to develop a visioning workshop for citizens to get involved in early in the process. One of the things that was identified as a part of the Heartland project with our staff working with those 5 towns was a need for some sort of information piece to help people, new residents to rural St. Croix County, to understand how the world works and who has responsibility for what and where can you get information and approvals and permits and things like that. And we were fortunate enough that the University Extension was willing to fund recently retired Extension agent Jim Janke to take this project on. And he worked with our staff and Land and Water and Parks and a number of county agencies to develop this piece and develop it in such a way that there's also an insert available that each town can develop with their own information as a supplement to this. And we want to thank Jim for taking that on, and his successor, Pete Kling, for taking it out on the road and distributing it to the towns and citizens of the county. It's been a welcome addition. Another particular project I wanted to mention that's in its final stages is a regional groundwater model. This has been a cooperative effort between Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix counties, USGS, UW Extension, and University of Wisconsin-Madison staff, developing a 3-county regional groundwater model. And the second stage, which they're finishing up right now, are more localized inset models in each of the 3 counties. And when this is available later this spring, early summer, we'll have some presentations that everybody can learn more about the details on this. Our recycling program continues to grow and expand in numbers. We recycled over 55 tons of recyclable materials in the 26 communities that we work with throughout the county, largely funded by a state recycling grant. We have put out and continue to put out 2 Your Wasteline newsletters. There'll be one coming out soon about our spring and summer programs in the next 2 to 3 weeks. This last year, we had a special recycling efficiency grant to develop a school district recycling program, and we worked with the school districts throughout the county and have developed 2 school recycling guides that the school districts can use within the individual schools to develop internal recycling programs that can improve recycling within all of the schools. A couple of other items I want to mention more specifically is a recent award and development of a display. We were very pleased and honored just a month or so ago to receive a statewide recycling award from ARROW, the Associated Recyclers of Wisconsin, which is the statewide association of recycling programs and companies. We got an outstanding achievement in education for work that we did cooperatively with Dunn County on an apartment recycling program to develop new informational materials in cooperation with apartment managers throughout the county, both counties actually, and our efforts and products were recognized at the ARROW conference this year with this award, which we're certainly extremely proud of and want to thank all of those who worked with us in the apartments throughout our county to develop that program. We also, as a part of the recycling, developed a new recycling program display to use at events throughout the county. It's on display out in the hallway. Suggest you take a look at it as you depart today, and we'll be having this out at a number of events throughout the county to promote recycling. We also do a number of special events for hazardous waste, tires, appliances, electronics. This is largely funded with grants and user fees, and we have a number of ongoing collections internally and other drop-off sites throughout the county for a whole host of smaller items. This last year in 2006, our 2 clean sweeps in the county took out over 32,000 pounds of hazardous materials from farms, businesses, and households throughout the county. We get some really interesting stuff we get to see come through, and we'd like to thank our highway department and the city of New Richmond for the use of their facilities and sponsoring locations for these events to occur. We also have a number of appliance collections both in the spring and fall. This last year generated almost 700 appliances, over 47 tons of material. And again, these are always popular events. Our tire pile from last year at the town of Richmond, our tire collections last year yielded over 1,900 tires, totaling out at about 41 tons. And a growing collection for us is electronics. We expanded that to 2 collections last year, which we will continue. We literally got overwhelmed here in Hudson at the first spring collection, and we've beefed up additional staffing and support from our contractor for this year. This is the scene from WITC's collection last fall. They joined us to sponsor their location. It worked very well, got a great response, and we look forward to being back there again this year. Let's talk a little bit about our code administration, all of our ordinance administration throughout the county. This includes the general zoning ordinance, subdivision review, issuance of the private wastewater permits, non-metallic mining, code enforcement, and ordinance development. Our general zoning ordinance, we provide staff support to the Board of Adjustment and certainly to the Planning and Zoning Committee. This last year we processed 56 special exception and variance applications through the Board of Adjustment, 20 rezonings through the county board, and 32 land use permits through the department. And we do a lot of this work in cooperation with town deputies, providing them support in turn for their support, and also some training opportunities for them. Our subdivision review last year, I think in terms of our subdivision review and permitting activities, we saw the same kind of downturn in the housing market in particular that we're seeing statewide and nationally. Our technical review committee reviewed 12 major subdivisions, 114 minor subdivisions. It's 527 total new lots, and managing a little under $4 million financial assurances. Our private wastewater program, POUTS if you will, this last year we processed 441 permits. We're seeing a rising percentage of non-conventional systems. We've got some difficult areas for siting systems in the county. We processed 4 Wisconsin fund applications this last year, and also doing annual maintenance notices for pumping under our ordinance and state codes. And we reached a milestone just this spring where we added all of the old archive permits hiding in our remote storage here in the building, so we have a complete database, and we'll be sure that those notices are going out to everybody in the county that has a system. Code enforcement this last year, this is code enforcement for all our land use ordinances. We had 45 new violations recorded, complaints filed, identified. Throughout the course of the year, we resolved 54 violations, including some carryover from the year before. We do this in coordination with our town deputies, and certainly a lot of support from Corporation Counsel and their staff in terms of processing these when push comes to shove and we have to start working, negotiating, and going to court. Some ordinance development. We had a lot of small things this last year. I'm not going to recite all these. Probably the largest one was the livestock sighting amendments tied to new state rules that the county board saw this last fall. We always have a lot of staff from different departments, whoever's involved in this particular year with the livestock sighting, a lot of valuable input and cooperation from the Land and Water Department. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about our land information activities in terms of real property description and more general county-wide land information programming. This last year with real property description, despite a slower and lower volume in the real estate market, we still added over 2,000 new parcels to the system, so we now have in excess of 54,000 property parcels throughout the county. An important activity we did this last year was a transfer of processing the tax receipts and bills from our department to the county treasurer. We talked about it for probably over a year between the two, and in terms of workloads and time frames, it made a lot of sense, and we want to thank Cheryl Slind and her staff for a very smooth transition. It was a good handoff for us, and they did a great job following through on it. We're continuing to do electronic data exchange with our assessors. This helps us be more efficient in terms of the transfer of data. We probably doubled this last year what we did the first year in 2005, and we look to expand that even further. We did some improvements to our website, and all of these adjustments improved our workflow so that we had work rolls this year out in early February, which was weeks ahead of what we've done the last 3 or 4 years. So we're real pleased with that result. Some more highlights about land information in general. All those parcels that we've got out there, we're maintaining all the parcel maps on them that local officials use, the public use, professionals access, and now over our website in particular. We issued over 300 new rural addresses, and our digital orthophotography and land information website continue to be popular things. I want to mention a couple things in particular, and also some notable technical support. This is a sample of our digital orthophotography that's available countywide. We flew in 2004. We get a lot of requests for this. We sell copies of it for the whole county or smaller, and it's an invaluable tool for anybody dealing with property and land use. As a part of that contract, we extended the ability to get very cost-effective contours, topographic contours, from that contract, and a number of developers and local officials and municipalities have taken advantage of that, and we now have over 42 square miles of contours throughout the county that you can see located here in these sections. I also mentioned our website. It's been very popular. It's a collaborative effort between a number of departments, including IT, who's been marvelous to support this with us. And as of just recently, we are up to over 1,700 registered users for this site who have subscribed for full access on the site. And we get marvelous feedback on this. We also get feedback with suggestions for improvements, which we have continued to make. You can get data on reports like this about all types of assessment and tax information on parcels or groups of parcels. You also have the ability to access a mapping tool with multiple layers, including those air photos I talked about, a marvelous research tool for people working on property issues. And then lastly, I wanted to mention the technical support we've been providing to other departments, particularly this last year. We provided and worked on a process to get a centerline address file for the new wireless E911 system and updates to that. We've worked with our emergency management people to develop EMS fire district maps, worked with the county clerk on some election maps, helped public health get a beach monitoring program going up. And we're not right now, in fact today, developing some trainings for the Sheriff's Department to implement some GIS activities and mapping down there. A couple of examples here. This is the EMS districts map county-wide. We've been working on wall size and report size versions of this that EMS and fire personnel can use in response. We've also been working, again, this is one of the samples of the district, voting district maps, the election maps that we've been working on with the county clerk. And lastly, we can't do all this work without some resources, and just a few fiscal notes for our current year budget. All these activities operating on a budget of about $2.4 million, and we've been working real hard with our committee and the Finance Committee to use as much as we can of outside resources, and fully 3/4 of our budget are from non-levy revenues. You can't do all of this, as Bob mentioned, without a lot of support and a lot of help and a lot of cooperation, certainly from you folks in the county board, reviewing everything we bring to you and also supporting us with resources. Our own committee, the Board of Adjustment, we work with dozens of local officials in carrying out our responsibilities, and certainly the citizens and taxpayers. Multiple departments that help us do our work, and certainly our own department staff. If you think we've done something well, it's because of the staff we have and the support we get from our committee. So with that, I'll say thank you to you too.
Any questions for Dave?
Dave, just a quick question with respect to the tire recycling. I think you indicated there were nearly 2,000 tires that were recycled. Where do those come from? I recently put new tires on my truck, and at the time I paid a recycling fee and the tires were disposed of. So I'm curious where 2,000 tires come from and show up at a site like that.
Well, we've been, I guess, maybe too busy just working with the contractors, getting them in and getting them processed. We haven't really surveyed people to find out. I know it's true with a lot of our collections. We still have people buying older properties, older farmsteads that have been occupied by somebody for quite a while, and I know a lot of materials get generated that way. I also know, I asked the same kind of question myself, I guess. I see folks traveling with a pickup load of new tires, and it's where are they going? How are they going to change them? So good question. I guess maybe that's something we'll have to consider, is to survey the participants in the programs, where they're coming from. So maybe there's a prevention approach we can take.
Dave, your 7th slide is titled Heartland Planning Project.
Yes.
And there's just a term there that I wondered if you could clarify. The slide is in the upper left-hand corner of page 2.
Yes.
And when it was on the screen, I saw the word density unit, and I think it was defined, but I missed it. Could you just go back over that?
One of the things we spent a fair bit with all of these towns is typically our land use regulations, zoning in particular, have been driven by minimum lot size, which is kind of a backdoor way to get to the density of development in terms of how many parcels or how many dwelling units you can have on a given area of property. And a lot of, through the planning process, discussing those concepts, most of these towns have been very interested in adding something about the density of development in addition to minimum lot sizes, because they just want to be more explicit about how much development you can have in a particular area, particularly our agricultural areas. No, there's just an example there, and if you're interested, I guess I just encourage you, let's get together so we can look at it in detail. Yes. There's 4 full pages, and there are some things in there about driveways and mailboxes. You bet.
At our our last emergency management meeting, we were talking about mapping and wondering when the maps will be actually distributed to the fire departments and the different agencies so that they can have those maps.
I think there were only some decisions to be done about sizes and formatting, but I know Brett on our staff has been working with Jack and representatives from the committee to finalize the details of exactly what they needed in terms of size and format.
Do you know when that will happen?
No, I can't. I can check and let you know.
Yeah, we'd like to know that.
Sure.
And then I had another question. I missed when you were talking about county property and inventory and the site plan. I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, when there was another board member here, he had asked if we could see that, and you had indicated, and Ron had indicated that it's done, but I've never seen it, and I don't know if anybody else has seen that. Is it possible for us to do that?
I guess I'd defer on that one to Chuck. There's been a lot of work done on that.
We can show it to you again. I'm pretty sure you saw it. We actually had the printouts and passed them around.
Yeah, but at that time it seemed to me, and I may be wrong, that we were going to get what each parcel was and what we were going to do with those parcels. I don't recall that ever coming back to us.
Right. A lot of them are, or most of them, almost all of them are under control or oversight of a department and a committee. Most of them are actually little highway parcels. Some of them are under land and water. The Oak Ridge property was one of those. The other ones are like the government center property, the county farm. There's the Apple River property. There is not a plan as to what to do with all of them, unless the department comes forward and says, we don't need this anymore, and offers it up, like the Oak Ridge property. I'm not really sure how else to.
I just guess my understanding is that we were going to see what we do have and what was actually there. When we saw the map, I think it was just like a dot, like we have something there, but we didn't know acreage or we didn't know what it was. So I'm just wondering if we're going to have that opportunity.
We can do that again, and I'm not trying to minimize it, but some of it is. I mean, it's a number on a piece of paper. It's very hard to show you what it is because I'm not sure we know. Some of the larger parcels are easier to see. We can go through the work that the intern did for us last year, and do that again. Be more than it's all still here.
Is it different than what we saw before?
Not particularly. There might be some additional parcels that we've acquired for reasons that I'm not aware of, but it's not that much different.
I may not be communicating. We can just talk about it later, because
Okay.
maybe I'm not communicating correctly what it is that I thought we were going to have.
Okay.
Yes, I was wondering if there is any particular time that the groundwater modeling inset for St. Croix County is going to be presented.
I would expect, talking with USGS staff, they've actually got most of the work done on the inset model for St. Croix County. They have actually been spending some time finalizing some details and information on the inset model down in Pierce County. So as soon as they're done with that, I expect May, June, somewhere on that kind of time frame, the next couple of months, that they'll be prepared, and they certainly do intend to come back up here to do a public presentation or presentations on the results of both the regional and the inset model.
Congratulations again on the recycling award. We'll all take credit for it. Thank you very much. And thank you for your report. We'll hear from Kay Walsh next, I think, from the Register of Deeds office.
Good morning, all. I haven't progressed to the PowerPoint presentation yet, maybe next year. You have my written report in the traditional green, and I just want to highlight a couple points for you. This is my 13th year as Register of Deeds and my 29th year in the office. And so we've seen during these years many changes and advancements and growth. And so as you review these statistics in the report that you have in front of you, you will see that the Register of Deeds office has also felt the effect of the downturn in the economy this past year, as many businesses and families have. The number of the real estate documents that we processed decreased by about 17% compared to the 2005 numbers. And this, of course, then affected the total of the revenue, which was down by 20%, and then the county revenue share down by 18%. But I did review the first quarter numbers for this year to see where we are, and the revenues are up about $1,400. I don't know, is that positive? It's going the right direction, so let's hope it is a positive sign for this year. But with that said, I'd like to just highlight some of the positive changes that we had in the office this past year. And on April 6th, we accepted our first electronically submitted real estate document. I mentioned last year that that was going to happen. It did. We get documents submitted in two different levels. One of the levels is that the document is created entirely electronically. And most of these are satisfactions of mortgages. So the lender is preparing the document on the computer. It's signed with the electronic signatures, and it's submitted to us electronically. We review it, process it by hitting a button. It gets the recording information on it and is sent back electronically to the submitter. So the other level that we receive is where they prepare the document in hard copy. And so this is like mortgages. We do get a few mortgages. And so they're prepared in the hard copy, they're signed, they're notarized, and then they're scanned. And then that scanned image is submitted electronically to us. So by the end of the year, we were receiving about 6% of our documents electronically. And so this has reduced the cost of postage and the handling of paper, and it also provides faster service for our customers. Now, the other advancement that we made was with the electronic Wisconsin real estate transfer return. This was developed by the Department of Revenue. All 72 counties are now receiving transfer returns electronically. We received our first one in February of last year, and in December we received 27.8% of the returns electronically. So, you know, it's increasing as more and more people become familiar with it. That number will increase. Change is never easy, and so we expect as attorneys' offices and title offices become familiar with this software and see how user-friendly it is, that they will be using it more. It greatly reduces the number of documents that we have to return because we can't accept them because they're not completed properly or completely. Because when they do it electronically, they can't submit it until they have it all filled in. So that's where it's an advantage to us. The other big project that we had was to select a vendor to scan our aperture cards. Now, before the days of scanning, we microfilmed all the real estate documents, and these were kept on aperture cards in our office. So we did an RFP, we hired a vendor, and he scanned all of these aperture cards for us. We now have all of these images on DVDs. We're in the process of importing them into the database. And as time permits, we will be back indexing these, but right now they are available for viewing if you know the document number or the volume and page of the document that you're looking for. So this will give information back to 1974, which will be very useful to people that are doing research, title companies, and so forth. And it should generate more external Laredo users. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, that is the product that we have that allows companies to sign an agreement with the county whereby for a monthly fee, they can access the information, you know, externally from their office. Last year, there were about 21 users that took advantage of this, and it generated a little over $34,000. So in conclusion, I'd just like to thank the team in our Register of Deeds office. We now have a full staff again. And we also are continuing to participate with the Partners in Education with the Hudson High School. We have a high school student that works in our office a few hours every afternoon. And I also want to thank the IT staff. We certainly couldn't operate with all this technology without their help. And I also appreciate the support of the Planning and Zoning Committee and the Board of Supervisors. And I extend an invitation to all of you to come down to the office anytime. We'll show you all this wonderful technology that we're now able to use. And as you review the written report, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, give me a call, or if you have any questions right now. If not, thank you.
All right, let's return to the agenda and item number 8. Resolution to approve county organization restructuring building services. Let's see, this comes up from finance. Mr. Kruger?
I'll move it to the floor.
Okay, Mr. Standifer? Looks like this. Any questions or debate, supervisors, on the item number 8 on our agenda? Ms. Norton-Baumann?
Yes, thank you. I understand, I believe I understand the reasoning for putting this position under the supervisory status of our coordinator. But my question is, it seems to me that we're getting more and more positions placed under that person's supervision. And I'm wondering why we're doing that. Does anyone on the committee, would anyone like to answer that question?
Well, this was approved in Finance Committee, and we looked at that. He reported to Finance Committee, and rather have him report to Finance Committee, he works closely with the administrative coordinator now already, and we just want him to, we want department heads to report, like this one, directly to the administrative coordinator.
Any other questions or discussion? Mr. Rebholz?
How many people does the administrative coordinator have reporting directly to him now?
Let's see, you have the finance director.
It would be the risk manager, the finance director, the HR administrator that was created at the last meeting. Those would be the direct reports. And then the people that are in that department through those department heads, if depending on how you want to look at it.
So 3 report directly.
Yeah, I think this came before the administration committee just to see that the proper processes were being followed. But one thing that strikes me is we seem to be going through some incremental reorganization. You know, we've given more and more responsibility to the finance committee, and now the finance committee is moving more and more responsibility to the administrative coordinator, and we're doing this in increments. And I'm not sure that it's against some strategy or plan or direction that we're going, and I wonder if we shouldn't, I don't have a problem necessarily with this at this point in time, but stand back and try to discuss about where we're going and how are we going to organize, rather than doing it 3 millimeters at a time, because I think there's some changes probably need to be made to try and balance out the involvement of the supervisors and committees in this stuff, but certainly incrementally doesn't do the job. So I'd like to suggest at some point in time we discuss how the county ought to be organized. Maybe that's under our goal setting or something, but I think that vesting more power in the finance committee and vesting more power in the administrative coordinator without an open debate on it is not the way to run the railroad.
I'm reminded of a conversation I had this morning with Mr. Kaflish in reviewing the goals for our discussion, and few minutes or when we get to it, that we do have an item there that talks about the organization of the county board in the broad sense. And I think probably back at our strategic planning session around a year ago, you might have been the one who championed that idea. It does seem perfectly appropriate that, and we can talk about it and see where the rest of the board is on it, that we be looking a little more generally on, are we organized for the next century the way we ought to be? So it would be good to have I personally agree with you that a broader look is appropriate. I was with the Finance Committee on this one, and I think this is clearly a right move to make. Yes, Mr. Kaflish.
I plan on bringing up for discussion item number 17 or 7 under goal setting to address this. But in this particular instance, I believe it's, even though I was absent from that meeting, I believe that it's imperative that an individual that we have has someone other than a committee to report to, and at this time, I believe it's appropriate that that person be the administrative coordinator.
Well, let's move ahead to a vote on the resolution then. All in favor should now vote aye. The roll call has been requested. Will the clerk call the roll?
Okay, Charlie Grant?
No.
Tom Dowd is absent. Chuck Mells?
No.
Richard King?
No.
Wallace Happhager?
Yes.
John Mortensen is absent. Esther Wentz? Jean Ritz?
Yes.
Gordon Awesome?
Yes.
Tom Kaflish?
Yes.
Chuck Strumke?
Yes.
Richard Marzoff?
No.
Sharon Norton Bauman?
No.
Roger Rebholz?
No.
Bill Cranmer?
Yes.
Daryl Stanifer?
Yes.
John Borup?
No.
Clarence Malick?
Yes.
Don Jordan? Ron Raymond?
No.
Cindy Leonard?
Yes.
Linda Lucky?
Yes.
Stan Kruger?
Yes.
Denise Gunderson?
No.
Lois Burry?
No. No.
Brian Hurchin?
No.
Julie Spear?
No.
Joe Hurchin?
No.
Bill Peavy?
No.
Gerald Peterson?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13, 14, 15, 16, no. Then we have 20.
The motion fails. We will now hear from the Administration Committee on its report on the consideration of a decorum bylaw.
Mr. Chairman, the Administration Committee had a request from Mr. Strumpy that we add a decorum bylaw to the county's bylaws. And after discussion and evaluation, we found that through the historical aspect of what's been going on in regard to decorum and so forth, that the current bylaws are sufficient.
Question or discussion? Mr. Strumke?
Yes, I'd just like to expand on that slightly. I actually did provide a resolution to the committee. I believe the committee did not give a adequate consideration of that resolution, so I've withdrawn it at this point. Committee members stood up and left before the resolution could be properly discussed, and thus there was no quorum there, as the chair stated. The important point of this is that the resolution itself was just to make it so that the committee chairs fall into compliance and act in the same manner as this body directs the county board chair to behave, I guess, for lack of better words. And my concern here is that, demonstrated to myself personally, that's not necessarily the case. And I'll resubmit that resolution at a later date. The committee basically said that they believe that under the rules that the county board operates, there's no need to have it stated. So I will amend my resolution and submit having that criterion requirement, as it so states that the county board chair has to act on, withdrawn also, because if it's not appropriate to be stated for the committee chairs, then it must not be appropriate for the county board chair. Thank you.
I would like to correct Mr. Strumke's statement that at the meeting that he was at and presented his request, he is correct. We did not act on that. At the next meeting, which he was not present at, this was a part of the agenda, and it was discussed, and it was determined at that time that it was not necessary.
Rezoning hearing scheduled for Planning and Zoning Committee, Larry and Mary Bauer, Town of Troy, Ag to Ag Residential. New rezoning applications submitted but not scheduled for hearings for Daniel Wine, Town of Baldwin, Ag 2 to Ag Residential. Daniel and Amy Haas, Town of Warren, Ag Residential to Commercial, and Arthur Moore, Town of Ceylon, Ag to Ag Residential. And that's all I have, but I have one reminder with regard to the WCA conference, which is scheduled October 7th through the 9th in Wisconsin Dells. If you're interested in going, please let me know. Thanks.
Are you going to get to the announcements? Yes, I'd like to announce that the Northwest Wisconsin Draft Horse and Mule Association is having their annual plowing contest right next to the Bass Lake Cheese Factory on the 5th of May. I believe it's the first time it's been held in the eastern part of the county. So they got a half of the chicken dinner and other things planned for the day.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to return to an agenda item for comment? And I refer to agenda item number 3. Well, I don't think that government ought to be accused of acting in a haphazard manner. It's been 18 years since the St. Croix County herd and prefix disappeared. So we've certainly taken a fair amount of time to agonize over what we're going to do with those buildings. Let me say that I've spent a lot of time in farm buildings and a lot of pleasurable hours milking Holstein cows in farm buildings. So having gotten my bona fides out of the way, let me indicate that I think it's long past time that we deal with this issue instead of incrementally just trying to agonize over time about what we're going to do with those farm buildings. Frankly, unless there is a milking herd in those buildings, they have no alternative use. The barn is full of tie stalls and would be clearly inappropriate for any kind of loose housing if we were attempting to have young stock or any other kind of livestock on the site. And as indicated this morning, we have a continuing liability issue, not only in terms of safety, but we've got a maintenance issue in terms of cost. I don't know how many of you are aware of the difficulties we had in the last lease, but there were a number of difficulties that related to repairs and maintenance on the building, and then we were left with a manure pit that we had to subsequently expend a considerable amount of money to empty. So I think it's long past the time that we dealt with the issue in terms of the appropriateness of those old buildings on that site. This board has, from a vision standpoint, clearly given the signals, I believe, that we intend to use that site appropriately to serve our elderly population, not some kind of bovine population. So I think we improve the site by having those buildings removed, not only from a financial, but from a liability standpoint. So, Mr. Chairman, I request the following action. While I would be prepared to offer an action item at this point, I will not because I don't want this to seem like we're trying to, after 18 years, railroad the issue, but I do request the following, that this item be referred back to Finance Committee for discussion again next month, and that the Finance Committee be directed to consider bringing a resolution to the May board meeting that requests RFPs for those buildings in an attempt to try and recognize some salvage value from them in an effort to clear the site and increase the value of the property when those buildings are no longer there.
I just got one question, and I'm sure Mr. Standifirth is referring. You're referring to all farm structures, which also means the silos, correct?
That would be correct. I think the RFP should clearly try and capture whatever value might remain in the ancillary equipment. There's a barn cleaner, there are tie stalls, there's a deteriorating milking system and bulk tank. There probably are unloaders in the two silos, but I would direct us to consider, yes, restoring that site to a vanilla basis and capturing whatever value we can from it, and ceasing the liability and the unknown future expense for repairs and maintenance.
Can Holstein cows give vanilla ice cream? I see. Consider the question referred to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee can take it up as you suggest. Ms. Spear, you had a point to make. Taken care of? Mr. Mills.
Just a quick tack on to Supervisor Standiford. The Amish community has got a disaster relief type of a thing where we've used them in the past for salvage efforts, unless indeed we want to try to get some salvage operation that could pay us for the lumber and everything like that. But, and they have their own liability package, so to speak. Just a thought.
Are they all Finance Committee? Or?
No, Planning and Zoning, Health and Human Services, Council on Aging, and Finance Committee. If you could stop up and sign these, please, thanks.
So we'll